Thank you for joining me on We Are Not Alone. I'm Lou Rosano, your host on this 12-part series as we seriously investigate the UFO phenomenon and the possibility that highly technologically advanced extraterrestrial biological entities from distant planets have been visiting us, observing us, and in some cases interacting directly with us. We have a very special show this week as we're going to discuss an area of ufology that, to my knowledge, has never been presented in the commercial television media. What would happen if tomorrow extraterrestrial beings that appear to be intelligent and, by all logic, technologically superior to us landed on the proverbial White House lawn in full view of the media and announced their presence on this planet? How would we react as a nation, as a planet? How would society react? What would be the effects of a known alien presence? What would be the effects on our belief systems and worldview? And more importantly, how would this affect our religious beliefs and our faith and our conception of God? With me today to discuss this are three distinguished guests: Reverend Zachary Royal, who is the pastor of the St. Mary First Missionary Baptist Church in Coral Gables and an adjunct professor of philosophy and religion at Florida Memorial College; Rabbi Mitchell Shefetz, director of Havorah of South Florida, if I pronounced that correctly, and Dr. Abraham Lavender, associate professor of sociology on FIU's North Miami campus. Thank you all very much for being here with me today. Thank you. Dr. Lavender, let me start with you. Okay, as I said, let's assume that tomorrow technologically superior extraterrestrial beings openly announce their presence on Earth. How do you think society will react? Now, let's keep in mind that they're neither, let's say that the way they announce their presence is that they're neither malevolent nor benevolent. They're just here to observe us and study us. How do you feel that this would, what effect would this have on society?
It would depend on several situations. For example, how the press deals with it. Certainly there would be a lot of nervousness and perhaps fear, depending on how it's presented. When you say that they are technologically superior, then the other question that would come to people's minds, I think, well, what about their value system and how that's related to ours, and whether or not that presents a threat to us. Because of the way our society has generally dealt with this topic of UFOs, there probably would be a lot of nervousness and perhaps some fear. Because in the United States, we have had an attitude basically of being closed to it. In the opening to your program, for example, there's one of the newspaper headlines says, just when we thought it was safe to go back into the cornfield. The implication being that somehow associated with this concept of UFOs is fear factor. And so because we've had so much of that, and because we know so little about UFOs, I think the initial concern would be one of fear, but then it would depend on where it happened, how it was presented, how officials, how the leadership reacted to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that it's very important that that this, if and when the time comes, that the media will have a crucial role in presenting this properly to us. Otherwise, I can easily see how panic could result. Everybody continuously, when I bring this issue up, always mentions the famous panic that occurred in 1938, I believe, when Orson Welles transmitted the War of the Worlds, and of course that was transmitted in a very fearsome manner. They're invading, they're landing, and there was a tremendous panic. And ever since then, people always point to that as this would be the justification for the government's keeping this all a secret from us. But they're not taking into account the fact that that was presented in a very fearsome manner, which would elicit that response from the public.
Anyway, not only that, I'm concerned about the compassionate response to that contact. I remember growing up as a boy and seeing horror movies and UFOs, things like War of the Worlds, and I never will forget, our solution to an experience with a UFO always centered around a gun, some sense of violence, that we were threatened by that presence, and by that presence being in our community, somehow that presence needed to be eliminated. Maybe that presence needs to be experienced and shared.
Very good point. Yes, very, very good point. We have to be careful what assumptions we make about extraterrestrials. We tend to project our own our own selves, our own values onto them. And we have to realize they are called alien because they are alien. If they truly evolved on a distant planet, they could be so totally different from us. Their entire value system and what they, the way they think is just totally alien. So we have to, that's a very good point. I'd like to cut just for a few minutes. I have a video which I would like to present. It's a video by Michael Lindman interviewing someone related to this topic. It's called UFOs and the Alien Presence, and I think it's very appropriate to interject at this point in time, and then we'll get everybody's reactions to that video. The video is supplied courtesy of Lightworks Audio and Video, and I'm very proud to present this. So let's roll that video now.
If at least some people in government know that UFOs are real, why don't they just tell us? One reason may be that the UFO situation remains puzzling even to the most knowledgeable experts. Indeed, if some UFOs are alien spacecraft, as many researchers believe, it may be that no one really knows who these aliens are or what they want. Ample reason for a cover-up. How many government officials would want to risk looking ignorant and powerless in the face of something as momentous as the discovery of alien intelligence right here on planet Earth? Another justification for the secrecy may be the possibility of social upheaval. In 1979, a former CIA official named Victor Marchetti published an article titled "How the CIA Views the UFO Phenomenon." In it, he theorized that all major governments are committed to hiding the fact of alien intelligence from the public, for fear that disclosure might, in his words, erode the foundations of Earth's traditional power structure. He went on to say that political and legal systems, religions, economic and social institutions could all soon become meaningless in the minds of the public. Civilization as we know it could collapse into anarchy. Such extreme conclusions are not necessarily valid, he said, but they probably accurately reflect the fears of the ruling classes of the major nations. The Robertson Panel report, discussed earlier in this program, demonstrates that our government has long considered UFOs to be a national security issue. Is public hysteria their only concern, or is there more? Millions of citizens believe they have had a close encounter with an alien. Some say the experience was wonderful. Others feel traumatized. In these accounts, aliens of many kinds are described. But a high percentage of unpleasant encounters, also called abductions, seem to involve a particular kind of alien known as a gray. Does this mean that some aliens are dangerous? Assuming that the abduction experience actually involves alien encounter, the alien's intent is by no means clear. Does anyone in our government have the answer? So far, we don't know. For most citizens, the challenge posed by UFOs and aliens is a personal one. Depending on what we already believe, adjusting to the arrival of alien intelligence could seem easy or almost impossible. Fear of the unknown is one of humankind's most basic traits. Any one of us might feel fear on first meeting an alien, especially if it looked very strange to our eyes. But fear, though understandable, is not necessarily warranted. If we prepare ourselves ahead of time with knowledge and self-confidence, we may be able to ignore our fears long enough to find out what's really going on. Indeed, the results might be astounding. Whether we like it or not, UFOs are telling us that the human race is probably not alone. Instead, we probably belong to a galactic community of intelligence, a cosmic neighborhood. If so, we may be approaching a completely new understanding of life in the universe. Such changes occur only rarely in human history. They can seem disruptive and alarming at first, but in the end, they signal a tremendous opportunity for human growth. If this is the final outcome of the UFO mystery, then UFOs might one day be regarded as one of the best things that ever happened to us. I'm Michael Lindemann.
Okay, gentlemen, any comments on the video?
Sure.
I'm sure you have lots of comments.
We noticed, you know, the fear that suddenly, if we're exposed to a new race, a new species, something alien, suddenly all the institutions of humankind are going to disappear, that the religions are going to disappear, the government's going to be overthrown. Everything we are going to know is going to fail. That's absurd. It means that we have no faith in our institutions.
Right.
Um,
Right.
the word that I hear again and again is fear. That we should be afraid.
Yes.
Now, fear results really from exposure, and the kind of exposure determines whether we feel awe, or fear, or terror. You know, imagine, for example, you were approaching the edge of the Grand Canyon. As you get off the bus and you look, you feel awe. As you get closer to the edge, you feel fear, depending upon the degree to which you can stand exposure. And as you get right over the edge and it begins to crumble, you feel terror. Well, our first reaction to something that's awesome is really awe. And our first reaction to something that is alien, if it's a beautiful alien, if it isn't terrible, if it isn't terrifying, if it doesn't come, you know, to challenge us, or it is awe. Here is yet another of God's creations.
Right. That's I'm glad you made that point, because I've discussed this with Reverend Royal in the past. My feeling for quite a long time has been, you know, who made the aliens? You know, I mean, it always comes back to God. I mean, ultimately, and a lot of people seem to, especially, and I hope I'm not stepping on any toes, and I know this does not pertain to you, Reverend Royal, but a lot of people in the religious community, especially a lot of the fundamentalist sects of Christianity in particular, give me a very hard time when I discuss the possibility of an alien presence, or even the fact that intelligent extraterrestrial life exists. And somehow, I don't know what it is in the Bible, and perhaps you later could shed some light on this, Rabbi, but that somehow precludes their existence. I mean, God created all the other planets, and it's more than logical to most scientists, at least, that on some of those planets, with the billion and billion, I sound like Carl Sagan, but the billion of planets that are out there, that there's going to be some that have suns like ours that revolve around it, you know, and have certain conditions which could foster life. Some of them could have been around, you know, life could have evolved on this planet, on theirs, and some of them could be older, or some of them could be younger than us. Some of them could evolve at a faster rate than us based on their genetic structure. And this is something I want to clarify too. A lot of people always say, well, they must have been around a lot longer than us. That's not necessarily the case. In some alien races, they may progress at a much more rapid rate than we do, and by virtue of that, they're more technologically advanced, perhaps.
But look, I think the rabbi makes the keen insight that the gospel of governmental cover-up is not only illogical, but it's not theologically sound. Salvation, the knowledge